everybody. Welcome to Hallmarkies Podcast, and we are here to talk about All Creatures Great and Small, Season 3, Episode 5 and 6. We're almost done, and it's a good thing because we're catching up just in time for it to air in the UK. We're all very jealous of people who get to watch Season 4, including Michelle is here.
Hi, everyone.
And she's got her own creature.
My dog is making a cameo on the podcast.
Yes.
Okay, lie down. Lie down. That's it. Good boy. There we go.
Aww. What's your dog's name?
His name is Chance. I named him after the dog in Homeward Bound.
Oh, okay. Good. Good. All right.
Fun Disney name.
Yeah. Well, we are going to talk about episode 5, season 3, episode 5, Edward. And this is a pretty interesting episode because they don't tend to have character specific episodes. And this one is pretty much Mrs. Hall most of this episode.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been a braver choice to have it be almost like a bottle episode and it just be her. Means we would have missed Tristan in an apron, and I don't think I could have coped without.
Yeah, I mean, he knows how to make potatoes.
Yeah, he loves a potato. Like, they are very, very the most versatile of vegetables.
It's when Mrs. Hall takes time off to meet up with an important person from her past. Siegfried immediately puts Tristan in charge of housekeeping duties while he focuses on running the practice and educating a visiting work experience boy. So this was a pretty sweet episode. It's very lovely.
Yeah, there was so much. I mean, obviously the Mrs. Hall Edward stuff is a bit dramatic, but all the stuff with Tristan and Siegfried and this little boy who was like the sweetest little boy in the world.
Yes.
Like all of that stuff was so good.
Yeah.
And I do think that the Edward and Miss Hall stuff really did live up to all of the sort of hints and stuff that we'd heard in the past.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so hard to come in and do like one episode, and play a character that's been spoken about so much. Since
that was tricky.
Yeah, it's like a character we've been hearing about for 3 years at this point. So yeah, it's not an easy job, and I think the actor did a really great job with it.
Yeah, Connor Dean is his actor's name that played Edward. And Anna Matadley is just always so excellent as Mrs. Hall. She's so good.
Yeah, she's excellent, and I feel like it's such a difficult sort of tone to play. She sort of has to be wanting to mend things with her son, but also, she believes that she did the right thing. And also just the whole issue of, her husband and the reason that they aren't together anymore, like all of that going on at the same time, like that was just really difficult, I imagine, for the actress to navigate, and she did a great job.
Yeah. She really, really did. And she's going to this particular station to meet him. He's going to be there, she knows, just for a little bit, but a chance to see him. And so most of the episode is her waiting for him. Most of the episode is her waiting for him, and then he finally arrives, and they have it would have been very easy to have made this like cheesy, and they could have Hallmarkified it very easily, but it was awkward and not like ideal, uncomfortable, but in the end they did have kind of that understanding, I think.
Yeah. And I like the sort of the waiting scenes of her, relationship with the women, making her tea, and the idea that she was not just like trying to mend things with her son, but this could possibly be the last time she's going to see him.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, he's going to join the Navy. we find out in the next episode, obviously, it's because it's following real events that, the war is happening, the country's at war. So yeah, like, and I think Mrs. Hall knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Like we've seen hints all from like the last Christmas episode that she's just had this sort of awareness more than any other character. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. And that, I don't know, they made it kind of complex as human relationships are, even to the point of when the cookies are spilled and she picks it up and you see her and she's just feeling the biscuits, I guess I'd say there. I don't know, it's complex. It's not perfect.
it wasn't all going to be fixed in,
Yeah.
you know, a morning, or an evening. It wasn't all going to be fixed, and I don't think she even got as much time as she thought she was going to get. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was no matter what time she got, it was never going to be fixed in a morning. And I feel
But
like they made as much progress as they possibly could as two humans that don't see eye to eye on something.
yeah, I think that it was very real in that way. And but then you had the lighter kind of moments with, and this what this showed us so well, with Tristan taking over for Mrs. Hall.
It's
And
so funny.
yeah, his big thing is he knows how to make a potato.
Yeah, he can make a potato in so many different ways.
He literally has this huge bowl full he's peeled.
Yeah, they're gonna be eating potatoes for a long time.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't blame him. I'm a big potato fan myself.
Yeah, I love potatoes. I love potatoes, but yeah, that's a lot of potatoes.
Yeah. It was funny. I used to watch this show called Four Weddings on TLC, where they're like comparing each other's weddings. Uh, and the thing I learned from watching that show is always serve mashed potatoes at your wedding. Always. People love mashed potatoes.
Yeah, it's the ultimate comfort food.
Yeah. There was somebody who had a mashed potato bar with different toppings. I was like, that is genius. That's what I need to have my wedding, if I ever have a wedding.
Out there, but like everybody's going to be going to
it. Yeah. And he's making shepherd pie at one point, and it looked pretty good.
I'm not the biggest. I don't like minced beef. But yeah, like my parents have. It's so funny. They have like mince and potatoes. They have shepherd's pie. They have all of these different things, and I'm like, it's essentially just mince and like, potatoes. Like you're just having it in different variations, but that's all you're having. Um, but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. But yeah, it's so popular in my house. Yeah, oh, it's so popular in my house.
Another Scottish dish you're not a fan of.
What?
Or British dish, I should say.
Shepherd's pie, cottage pie, not for me.
And so we found out, I don't know if we knew the name of Siegfried's pet rat for this episode.
Not before this episode. I don't remember ever having a name.
Yeah, Vonalel.
Yes, it had to be something like that for Siegfried. Just like reminding it, going like, what?
I mean, all due respect for any rodent owners, it's definitely not for me. That is not the pet that I would choose.
Yeah, I had hamsters growing up. I had gerbils growing up. It's just very, very upsetting when they die. They don't live for very long.
Yeah.
And it's really upsetting. I also had a cat that was trying to get into the cage, and it was trying to
Sure.
kill the
They're doing their
gerbils. It was also trying to kill my fish as well. It was the cat was crazy. Yeah. So they are a little bit. I think even now, like pet care has gotten to such a level. Like I watch people on TikTok and they have such elaborate enclosures for their rodents. It makes me feel so bad for the cages and things that I had for mine. Like they have ones that are like the length of like a bed. They're like huge, these enclosures. Um, but yeah, little Siegfried, he's just got like a little tiny cage on his desk, a little friend to keep him company while he's doing his paperwork.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and he's very close to Vonalel, to this
Yeah, he
rat.
tolerates it when he does people.
Yeah. And this boy comes in over to be, he's looking for a mentor,
Hmm.
and he was really cute.
Yeah, and like so polite, and it was so funny that like like you couldn't you couldn't be on Tristan's side because this kid was so sweet and Tristan was so jealous, and you're just like on the kid's side because he was so nice.
Yeah.
Um, I was trying to remember where I'd seen him. But he was in the most recent Railway Children, the Railway Children Return. Um, yeah, I think he has a pretty big part in that. Uh, he did look a little bit familiar to me. Yeah, I think he does have
Mm.
the poster. Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
He
really
was
good
good.
film.
He was cute. Yeah, I saw that.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Then we have that, so yeah, Tristan's cooking, and he says that Siegfried says, "This is different than I was expecting, but better."
Yeah, that's just the first bit of potatoes though. By the by the third or fourth meal, he's really over the potatoes.
Yeah. Uh, and the boy has they called him egg mayonnaise, but it's basically like egg salad,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, just like eggs and mayonnaise together.
Yeah, delicious. That's one of my favorites, at least.
Yeah, I like it as long as there's not too much mayonnaise.
Uh-huh.
I feel like some
Yeah.
people put way too much mayonnaise, and it makes
Mm,
them kind of like it makes your bread kind of soggy, which I'm not a big fan
mm,
of.
yeah. Well, I like it when you toast the bread too.
Oh, yeah, that's class. My
That's
dog's hitting the computer.
um so we also have this dog that gets hurt.
Mm,
They bring him in, and I thought that was all very, like, he gets to the heart of what they're all about.
yeah.
Siegfried operating on the dog, and the mentor helping him,
Mm-hmm.
and Minty helping him to move the bone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. It was well done.
Yeah, and it's also just gives like insight into what Mrs. Hall does because Tristan had to sort of support the owner who was sort of, really
Right.
devastated.
That's true.
You
That's a
know,
good point. Yeah. And so then yeah, we have these women that are outside the station that are deaf,
hmm
that are selling tea and serving tea, and Mrs. Hall and this woman sort of notice each other, and they start kind of supporting each other, and she gets the tea and sees the biscuits, and they're sort of a back and forth, and at the end she's able to read Edward's lips. Yeah, so he says, "Yeah, I love you, Ma."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because the deaf girl can read the lips, he is able to see it, and it's just all. It was very sweet. It was very
Mm-hmm.
sweet.
Yeah, yeah, and we sort of find out, that I think we'd know this already, that he had stolen from a previous house that she'd worked in,
Mm-hmm.
and she called the police, which meant that he went to prison, which now means that the Navy was kind of his only option.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there, and I feel like it was handled really well.
Yeah, he says, "Why did you do it? Why did you turn me into the police?" And she says, "I did it for your own good."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then at the end, she's talking to Siegfried, and she says that I feel lighter. It was all too brief and over before I knew it, and yet the very ground beneath me feels like it's shifted.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good. And I wish the past would invite me back to rectify a thing or two.
That was such a good line.
Mm-hmm. It was really, really good. And then Siegfried says, "I don't think any of us know how to express our gratitude to you, Mrs. Hall."
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really sweet.
It's very, very, very sweet. Just love this little like family that they made for
Mm-hmm.
themselves. It's very, very good. We also find out, so Mrs. Hall, she tries to give the biscuits to Edward. He refuses. And then she finds out that he doesn't speak to his father. And he says, "I can't stand the fool. We were close before I saw him for who he truly was."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that, well, I don't like it, but it is interesting that she, is very, she defends the dad and says, don't speak about him like that, and you know, sort of hinted at the fact that he was in World War One. He came back very changed and very
Right.
lost himself to alcohol, and I think she's very aware of not to blame him for what was done to him. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that thing of like, mental health wasn't really a thing back then.
Right.
It just wasn't something these men weren't taken care of when they came back. So
Yeah, PTSD and things like that wasn't really a thing.
no,
Yeah.
so sad.
Yeah. So then we also have in this episode, we have Helen and James finding out that Jenny has quit school.
Hmm.
She thinks that she can, she just likes being a farmer. She doesn't, want to go to school. And she has been helping the sheep. It turns out one of the sheep has an infected hoof.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to treat it, and James is trying to treat it, and they're trying to talk to her. I mean, I think that my main concern would be, is she getting an education more than is she necessarily at school? Because I mean, especially back in this era, it's really only been since like the 1950s that the whole idea of year-round 9 to 5 in a desk, kind of schooling became the rule. After the war, when more women were working and doing these things, then it wasn't. I mean, even some of our greatest minds were technically homeschooled. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was technically homeschooled, and so that would be my main concern with Jenny. Is she continuing to gain an education even if she's not going to school?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think she could definitely still get that maybe from Helen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Helen and James, and I mean, so many people that could teach her about all kinds of things in her life.
because we've seen from Helen, like, she, does a lot of the paperwork at the vet now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I too. So she's definitely had a lot of education in terms of, running the farm and the financial side of that. That's
Right.
something that Jenny will, have to take on and have to, understand all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she would.
Yeah. I just think we kind of like panic, these days, like, oh, someone's not in school. That doesn't mean they're not getting an education. They could still be getting an education. It just depends on the situation. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to be concerned about. And especially if I would be concerned if I was Helen, because I wouldn't want her to be making this decision because I had moved away from the farm, and so that would make you feel bad if you were the reason that she stopped gaining education was, because she left.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it came like Helen's feelings and her sort of outward reaction was mainly due to guilt. I definitely feel like she carries a lot of guilt for leaving. But yeah, it's crazy. It's sort of like watching Heartland, how quickly the actress playing Jenny is growing up.
Yeah.
It's like how we had like Amber Marshall, then we had Georgie, and it was like literally in a blink of an eye.
That's true. Yeah. And so then Helen says to Jenny, I'm sorry for making you feel like you aren't good enough. The truth is, you've always been a farmer. And if I've been good at anything, it all comes down to you, is what Jenny says. And so that was very sweet. And so they're going to work on that. And then you have this great conversation with Tristan and Siegfried. He burns his hand. Then he says, when I was the age of this boy that's there, when I was his age, I used to look up to you, but I think you always resented me. And then you have Siegfried admitting that he had told Evelyn, his wife, that he wasn't ready for children. Then you came around and you needed our time. Just when I was ready, then she got ill and she died, and here we are. And this is when she says, I would do things differently if I had another chance.
Yeah, that was such a good scene. And again, it just explains so much of who Sigrid is and his behavior. And he's obviously someone that carries a lot of anger and regret about the past. I think it's, a brave decision to sort of show all of that before explaining it. The audience wasn't sort of spoon-fed it right from the beginning. It's just sort of like you had to sort of
it's built.
You had to take him at his worst.
That's true. I mean, I can relate to Siegfried because I have much younger siblings that I was sometimes kind of asked to co-parent. I mean, my parents were the main parents and they were alive and active and everything. Most of the time I didn't even live, near them. So my involvement wasn't nearly this, but I did have some moments, where I was less a sibling than I was a parent figure. And it wasn't until they got to be older in their 20s and stuff that the relationship started to change more, into more of a sibling dynamic that you normally have. So I can understand a little bit of that pressure and kind of what he was asked to do. And it's not easy sometimes being the second parent, or secondary parental. You'd rather be the fun aunt and uncle, the fun sibling, kind of a thing, but you're put in that position.
Yeah, and I thought it was
sorry, go ahead.
No, I thought it was handled really well, and I love the fact that Siegfried and Tristan's relationship just isn't a straight line. Like they're never gonna fix anything. They're never gonna it's just gonna be up and down. And I feel like they're really good that it's very honest.
Yeah.
It's not every relationship is perfect and there's it takes a lot of work, and the show doesn't shy away from the fact that they have issues.
Yeah, so I thought this was a good episode. I mean, I give it like an 8.5 or 9.
Yeah, it was really good. Especially the Mrs. Hall Edward stuff. It was just really well written.
Yeah.
We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the good folks over at Baker Bookhouse Publishing.
And they have 3 really fun upcoming books that you'll definitely want to check out. And the first is A Royal Christmas by Melody Carlson. And this is a no-nonsense law student, Adelaide Smith, doesn't believe in fairy tales. But when she learns she's the daughter of King Maximilian V, the ruler of a small European principality, she's swept into a world filled with family mysteries, royal jealousies, and the possibility of her own happily ever after. Then we have On Moonberry Lake by Holly Varney. Cora Matthews returns to Moonberry Lake to settle her mother's affairs and then get on with her life. What she finds is a strangely enticing inheritance, including a dilapidated lodge, a lot of eccentric neighbors, a handsome stranger, and a whole lot of family secrets to unravel. Then we have Against the Wind by Amanda Cabot. Ready to leave town and start her life as a doctor in training, Louisa Vaughn finds herself stuck in Sweetwater Crossing, saving a handsome stranger's life. Little does she know that he'll bring love and danger into her real life. Make sure you check out each of these books from Baker Bookhouse Publishing wherever you shop, and you can use the affiliate links below or at bakerbookhouse.com. That's bakerbookhouse.com. The next episode, the last episode of season 3, the regular last episode at least, For Whom the Bell Tolls. And this is James finds a case of TB while testing his father-in-law's herd. Could it be the end of the farm? Meanwhile, Tristan proposes marriage while Mrs. Hall tries to save an abandoned dog. Suddenly, Britain declares a state of war. And I think this one did an excellent job of building everything up to this declaration of war. I mean, we care about these characters so much, and you know, them including this. And I mean, it's a great example of the difference between When Calls the Heart and All Creatures Great and Small. That
Mm-hmm.
even if they didn't have any of the characters actually going to battle, because that is going to be expensive. Even if they didn't have that, the fact that they have to deal with it happening and the decision to not go, I think is important and powerful and adds a layer to this show that makes it special.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see it next season as well. Like, it's going to touch everybody, like every single body, and every single like business, every single person, whether they're, you know, going or not going, or, you know, they're gonna, you know, their communities are going to be ripped apart. It's just gonna, I mean, my gran would tell stories of, you know, the Second World War, and it's just unfathomable. It's like, it's just so difficult to comprehend, and no matter how many like documentaries and movies that we see sort of portray it, like, I don't think any of us are fully capable of understanding it.
Yeah, I mean, and think of how close it really became. And there like, if you read the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society, which is a really good book, it's all about the Germany occupied that island of Guernsey in the UK. They were literally occupying it, and you think how close things got to being different. You know, that if we hadn't had Churchill, if we hadn't had these leaders, if we hadn't had the choices that were being made, I mean, that's the thing about something like Dunkirk, how pivotal that was, and how things were just on the edge. I mean, it was so close.
And it'll be interesting next season to see how far they sort of go with it. You know, are we just going to stay focused on Derby, or are we going to follow the characters that are either having to go to war, or you know, we don't even know the characters that are, you know, 1 or 2 maybe confirmed, but other than that, like, a lot of the regular faces that we're used to seeing, we probably won't see next season, and a lot of new people as well.
Yeah, of course, we know that about Tristan, so we're not going to see him, which is very sad. And at least in next season, hopefully he'll come back eventually. Hopefully the show will keep going. But yeah, no, I could definitely see some plots hopefully going on with maybe even with James. I don't know if he's gonna do something, it seems like he's not so far, but we could see him go off and do something in the war. He conscribed, but whether he's going to be enlisted, we don't know. But
Yeah.
it starts out with Hitler attacking Poland, and that's the beginning. And Helen's dad, he says there's no point in worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, and you have no reason to feel guilty. But he does feel guilty.
Yeah, like James carries like a huge amount of guilt. And I think that's very well portrayed by the actor, but yeah, it's just so hard to fathom. But I do like these moments between them because it's starting to feel a little bit more fatherly from him.
Yeah.
Not fully there, but getting there.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's always nice when characters that don't normally spend time together get to spend time together. So you get to see different dynamics, and we don't normally see James just with Helen's dad. So it was a kind of a good dynamic. And so then he finds out that one of the cows has tuberculosis, has TB, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, especially for such a small farm. The fact that closing down for a month, that could end them. Especially they're on pretty much the eve of the war.
It could take out the whole herd.
Yeah. And not great for James.
Yeah.
It's like this was his first. I think this is probably like a repeat test because I think he was sort of the first one to sort of volunteer, so he'd already been tested. And so there was probably just the assumption that this was going to go as well as the first time.
Yeah. So he does a second test to try to verify. And they have to report it, and they find it. And but before they're able to report it, Helen's dad kills the cow and sends it away. And so he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
The government needed to do it. Is that it?
Yeah, I think there's just like steps that need to be taken. And also just like the paperwork goes against pretty much what her dad's doing. So yeah, like James, I think it's just like a huge thing in terms of like James's career. Like he could lose his career over it. Because it's sort of like, I'm trying to think of the right word, but all I can think of is like betrayal of like.
It's like favoritism.
Yeah.
Kind of, because and so Helen is filling out all these forms. She fills out the one and sets it aside, but then ends up getting mailed. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah, that was devastating.
Lied. Yeah.
Paul just doing our job.
It was stressful. This Mr. Harcourt, he is tough. He's stressful.
That actor is just like giving it 110%.
Yeah, he really is. So then we have Tristan. He has dinner with Florence and her parents. And I liked the line, "No better test of a man's character than how he gets along with a dog."
Yeah, that was sweet.
I feel like that is this show in one line. It seems like that captures this show. And so they're kind of teasing Tristan, giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
Saying, what is your intentions with our daughter and all this stuff?
Yeah, I really like them together. I'm sort of disappointed that it goes the way that it does. But yeah, I did like the dinner table scene. That was really funny.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was an interesting choice that they made. So Tristan, he gets pretty sloshed, and I like when he said, "It's impossible to not love someone who makes toast for you." That was a good line. I think that is true. Breakfast in general, I think it's impossible to not love someone who makes you breakfast.
Yeah,
huge brownie points for me. Because
Yeah,
I do
that is,
not feel like cooking in the morning. And so if somebody makes me breakfast, oh, it's the best.
yeah. Like breakfast is such a luxury in my life now because I work so early.
Yeah.
Literally my days off are the only days that I actually get a breakfast.
Mm-hmm. So you just have cereal or even
I
not
don't have
even
anything. Yeah, I don't have any. Literally just fueled by coffee.
Oh no.
Fueled by coffee until lunchtime.
Oh, no. I know some people like that intermittent fasting. Maybe that's what you can just say you're doing. Oh, I'm just intermittent fasting.
Fantastic.
You're not breaking the fast until lunch because I think coffee can count as still part of the fast.
Yeah,
'Cause
I'm
it's-
just like so lazy. Like there's these I watched this TikTok of this girl like and it was like get ready for me with me for work. And
Mhm.
she has like an entire day before she even leaves to go to work.
Oh, I know.
I'm like, oh, like you serious? There's just no like I wake up, like 10 minutes, 10-15 minute walk for me to go to get to work. So that means that I have to get up.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Minutes late,
Yeah,
like 40
no.
minutes before I have to go.
I
Like
value my sleep more than that. That's for sure. That's for sure.
sometimes.
So then this dog is left on the doorstep, and first Siegfried just wants it to be done away with, and they can't have it. But Mrs. Hall becomes very attached to the dog.
Yeah, this dog was very well cast. Like, it was such a
Mhm.
like the
It's very
sweetest
sweet.
dog. Yeah, like Springer Spaniels are just the sweetest dogs. Have very high energy, but I guess it doesn't really matter when you're in a place like Derby that has like
Yeah.
tons of fields and things like that. But yeah, it's just like the sweetest dogs.
Yeah.
And I was like after the first scene, I was like, nobody better take this dog from her. This is her dog.
Yeah. And the first he's just taking it to Miss Pumphrey,
Hmm.
but she really doesn't want to. And you see the look in her face. She's like, oh no.
Yeah, and the dog is like, no, I've chosen my owner.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I forget who says this when it says when you find someone you really care about, you must cling onto them like a life ring in a storm because you never know what might happen next. I forget who said that, but it's good, beautiful. If it was Miss Pumphrey, I can't remember, but she wants her home to be a sanctuary during the war.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that was one of the storylines in Downton Abbey that I really liked. That they made
yeah,
that they turned the house into like a hospital essentially.
yeah, that was a good
These big,
storyline.
yeah, that these big houses
Mhm.
were just sort of the doors were opened.
Yeah, well, and especially because characters like Edith
Mhm.
And even Mary were able to be useful in a way that they never had before.
Yeah, they were humbled in a way that they never
Yeah.
had before.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the evacuated kids
Hmm.
and the little girl, and then Tristan says to James, "What will you do?" And James says, "Why do you ask?" And Tristan says, "I suppose because you always do the right thing."
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
a
they're
really good
both.
line, and yeah, so true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to find the owner of the dog. They're trying to, and then it's Mrs. Hall who mails the results of the TB. She was trying to be helpful. She doesn't
Yeah, she was
realize.
just in her job. She was just
Mhm.
in her job.
Yeah, and she's because they thought, oh, he didn't even have a stamp. And but she was just trying to be helpful. And then Tristan gives flowers to Florence and he proposes. And then she says, "Why would you propose?" Which was brutal. And
Yeah,
then
it
she
was like
says,
a kicked puppy.
yeah, she says, maybe now's not the time. Step out of your brother's shadow. And it's interesting because they act like he's totally, way too young, to get married. But what is he, 21? Right?
21, 22, yeah, something like
Get
that. Because
married.
he's
I know he's never seemed like that irresponsible to me. He could get married.
yeah.
All
I
that.
feel like they have this sort of portrayal of him like he's this sort of like Jack the Lad's kind of like a bunch of people, but he doesn't really.
Yeah.
And he has this really sort of outgoing personality, but again, he's not sort of this young guy that's like sleeping around and going with all these different girls or anything like that. That's not who he is. But yeah, they have this sort of idea that he's just sort of out there and won't settle down, and it's like he's never had the chance. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know why he has this sort of like reputation. And yeah, it
Yeah.
was sort of brutal seeing him turn down.
Yeah. All that matters in a marriage, I mean, not that I'm some expert on marriage, but I think all that matters in marriage is having two people that are willing to grow together. So if you get married young, that can be great because it can be harder to get married older because I'm like set in my, if I were to get married now, I'm like set in my ways. I'm 42. Like how much room do I really have to grow with another person? I mean, I would
Hmm.
love the person, so I would, but it would have its own array of challenges that somebody that's 18 and is not going to have. So it's just all about individual relationships, or 21 in this case, that as long as they're willing to grow with each other, then I don't think there's anything wrong with getting married young.
Yeah,
It just
and it's not
depends on the
even a
couple.
yeah, and it's not even a marriage; it's an engagement.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know engagements were fairly quick back in those days, but and obviously it sort of came from a place of panic from Tristan.
Yeah.
Obviously this sort of impending sort of doom that hangs over the whole episode.
Yeah.
So maybe she recognized that it probably wasn't coming from like an authentic place.
Mm-hmm.
If this wasn't happening in the world, would he actually still propose?
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want him to find someone new or if I want this relationship to work out. Um, I think at this point I just want to see Tristan again. I just want him to be back in the episodes.
I know. Well, so he's talking to Siegfried, and he says that Flo has the courage to live her own life. And he says, nothing I will ever do will be good enough for you. And then Siegfried says, I will always look after you. I hope you know that. Oh, it was yeah. Yeah. And I mean, of course you'd want to try to stop him from joining the army. And you want to keep your loved ones as safe as possible, but they're going to make their choices. And so James goes to meet with Harcourt, and he is very tough on him. He's very angry with him. And but then he says, I never signed the document. And I think Helen is one who says James is never anything but honest.
Yeah, he very luckily didn't sign it, so legally it's not actually. I don't think there's anything that can be done. The paper, the forms can't be processed. So yeah, he got through that by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah, he says, she says, you strike him down, you'll lose all the farmers. My husband is a good man, and right now we need good men now. Well, we need now more than ever.
That's a good point. It took James a long time to get the farmers on board. And they would pretty much be starting from scratch with someone else.
Yeah. So Helen's dad agrees to sign over his herd. And this is when we get the announcement about the country at war on the radio. And then James says, Tristan, you're a good man, Trist. It was very sweet, their relationship. And they said, marriage doesn't tell you who you are, but you need to find out about yourself. So, and yeah, this is when Miss Pumphrey agrees to take the spaniel, and Mrs. Hall's like, no.
Yeah,
he
the
belongs
spaniel
here
wasn't
with us.
Yeah.
And I forget who it was who says the only rational response is to try to help, which makes sense. Yeah, when you hear about war and you hear about you want to do something, you want to help.
I think we'll see a lot of that next season.
I'm so anxious. I can't wait. That's why if you get the link, definitely let me know. Okay. Then Tristan and James basically enlist. And you see Siegfried and Mrs. Hall watching them, and then they hold hands, and Helen is crying and upset. It was perfect. I mean, what else could you do?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but there was definitely some, like, again, moments between, or not even between, but just Siegfried watching Mrs. Hall that could be read as him developing feelings, or
definitely.
some sort of, like, again, I
well,
don't
we
know,
already
because we see sort of Gerald's come back into the picture a little bit, so it's sort of hinted at now that she's sort of put the thing with her son, not behind her, but definitely some forward momentum on that she might be ready to move things forward again with Gerald. And of course, that's when Siegfried.
Yes.
Sort of,
I mean, we definitely have it in the Christmas. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in another episode. But yeah, I mean, I think this holding hands thing was not an accident. I mean, it was definitely. I think I can see at first. I didn't really see them as endgame, but the more we've gotten little hints, we really have.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going that way.
Yeah, for sure. So another great episode. Almost nothing to complain. A 9.
Yeah, perfect show.
It really is. Well, let us know what you think of this episode. We would love to have your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And Michelle, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Michelle R. Benson.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure that you're following the podcast, The Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.